Hello, my name is Robert Bello and this is my project. What you see here is where I first got my interest for my project. It was at an air show in Atlantic City during last summer. And I was able to see a wide array of aircraft, military and civilian. And I was always curious, what was the difference between them? What made them so special? What made a military aircraft a military aircraft, and what made a civilian aircraft a civilian aircraft? There has to be some similarity between both. At least what I thought at the same time. And my hypothesis was that because of both being made by the same companies, generally, since both companies market civilian and military aircraft when trying to maximize their profits, you usually see a shared amount of technology between both civilian and military aircraft. And you often see the marketing techniques that these companies use to profit. Now, looking at the history of these companies and going all the way back through my core curriculum in the first phase, which was studying the first days of flight up until about the Second World War from the Wright brothers starting at. From the beginning, I first wanted to investigate the Wright brothers, and then I wanted to move up to more modern days. But looking and starting off in the beginning of the entire series of aircraft history, which only spans over 100 years, a very new technology to be exact, one really learns how primitive our aircraft still is compared to modern and future designs, and how civilian aircraft is still very primitive compared to military aircraft, which is exceedingly considered to be modern and advanced for today's standards. But at one time, civilian and military aircraft shared many things in common, like the aircraft you see above you in the video, which is a Supermarine Spitfire. Very similar in design to Cessnas in a way. Cosmetically, but not internally. And this F-16 that you see, some of them have been demilitarized for collectors and civilians to fly. The problem with this, though, is you really can't make the case that F-16s are civilian planes, but you can make the case that the technology used in them is used in civilian aircraft currently. And civilian aircraft and military aircraft made by similar companies often employ the same techniques to sell their products, using words such as state-of-the-art or innovative. And because of this, buyers swoon into these marketing ploys, and the aircraft industry makes millions and billions of dollars each year from prospective military and civilian buyers. And as a flyer of aircraft myself, I found this to be extremely fascinating, looking back on it all. I found that understanding the fallacies of these companies and the lies that they spread to individuals was more than enough to satisfy me. And this entire documentary is to exploit them for the lies that they hand out to the general public. I've spent a year studying this phenomenon. Now, what you see here is the emblem for the Civilian Air Patrol. The Civilian Air Patrol is the official United States Air Force Auxiliary. As a cadet member of the United States Air Force Auxiliary, otherwise known as the Civil Air Patrol, I have been exposed to Cessna aircraft, which I began my first experiences in flight with. I have flown a Cessna before, and many times as well. But what I learned from the Cessna was that all aircraft really have things in similarities between each other. The problem with this is that you really have to observe aircraft up close to understand it. Being in a different aircraft every time really does help. And going to that air show, as you saw before, was really a great way of understanding it. Because even though the basics of flight are the same, the different features in each aircraft differ with every model. Companies like Boeing, for example, tend to be the most popular in the civilian market. In terms of commercial, though. Commercialized planes, such as their 747, are very popular. Much like their Airbus, which many of you, if you've rode on planes before, may have been on. It's one of the more successful commercial planes out there, carrying passengers from many locations each and every day from airports. But many don't understand that Boeing is also a military contractor, and they make military helicopters and also military planes and utilities. And at the same time, much of the technology that they use in their aircraft that you would see here in the 747 is also used in the military projects that they do. And it's very distressing to some to understand that the same technology that you use to get from point A to point B is also used for war. Another company like General Dynamics does the same exact thing. And the problem with these companies is that they market both their civilian and military aircraft to their buyers in ways that are unfair. They would say that their civilian aircraft is state-of-the-art, but really it's just a copied over or translated version of their military projects, or maybe even an outdated version of their military projects. So they're just recycling old ideas. Looking at the different jets and how the jet age came into power after the Second World War, at a time when the Cold War was looming, you can see that through different nations, copies of planes were made. There was even one case where the Russians copied a US plane and they actually put a piece on it that was not even meant to be there. That was actually just a patch to fix up a hole. And they copied it exactly the same way. And this just demonstrates how each company, much like how the Russians copied the United States and the United States copied the Russians, how each prospective buyer would be fooled into thinking each company was making up its own innovative designs, whereas most companies are actually stealing designs from one another illegally, or they're taking ideas from other companies and they're improving upon them. A way to make money would be to cash in on this by using trigger words such as innovative or creative or state-of-the-art or new. Even helicopters, like this Black Hawk you can see, are a very big part of their business. Helicopters and airplanes make up a large proportion of our military's budget, and by selling these aircraft to military buyers from all over the world, not just the United States, millions and billions of dollars are made by these corporations who can continue to get away with what they need as they do so because of their military affiliations and power and wealth. Now, many would think that the helicopter is a new invention, but really it goes back to even the late 30s and early 40s, during and before the Second World War, where helicopters like you see pictured here were being developed, and it was only until maybe about the 1960s that we saw them being used in war efficiently. Most iconically known as the Huey helicopter, not pictured here, but being the most famous helicopter in the Vietnam War, arguably. Again, as a pilot of Cessna aircraft, on many occasions, I have found there to be very simple ground rules and many basics for all aircraft that are observed in every kind of situation. But the features that companies implement into their aircraft are what stand out. Every aircraft is different, yet the same. For example, the Cessna aircraft you see pictured is what I fly. And even though it's not exactly the same plane I fly, it's a similar model, and the internals are virtually identical. But if another company were to take this shape, you see the vehicular shape of the Cessna, and were to put new computer systems into it, they have arguably changed the way this aircraft works. And this is how companies rise up and how they conquer over older designs. And sometimes they even steal ideas like the computer I mentioned before, and they improve upon it, and they call that state-of-the-art when it's only a small improvement or a small update over a previous design that they or another company had made. And this is where I come to my conclusions. Aircraft is a new technology.